'Cause he's got you under his skin. This is your look at the Mafex The Amazing Spider-Man Venom action figure. The Marvel Mafex Venom features a 90s-inspired appearance and features a high level of articulation that Mafex figures are known for. The Medicom Venom figure stands over 6 inches tall and features several accessories, including web effects and an Eddie Brock head. Before we spend some time with this symbiote, the first thing we're going to want to do is figure out how tall Mafex Venom stands. So I'm going to take the tape measure to the very top of his head. Stop it right there. According to the readouts, Mafex Venom stands 6.3 inches in height. Switching that to centimeters, revealing that the figure is 16 centimeters exactly. Now, I tend not to review a lot of Mafex figures, and simply the reasoning for that is just my local comic book stores don't stock Mafex. Or at least they do, but the ones that they stock are usually movie tie-in figures that nobody is interested in picking up anymore. No, the Venom was one that was definitely on my sites, but I couldn't find him locally, so I ended up having to order this guy online. And I ordered him online at Big Bad Toy Store, along with the Child's Play Chucky that we just recently had a look at. I really like the way that the Venom looks, and be more inclined than to pick up maybe the Carnage and the comic tie-in Spider-Man, even though I know that Spider-Man has skyrocketed in prices, so I'm going to have to see if I can find a good price somewhere while it's still not being a knockoff, because that's one of the problems that face this line, is there's so many knockoffs out there. It's hard to really know whether you're getting the legitimate figure or you're getting one that has been knocked off. Nonetheless, though, before we get down to the details on Venom, we're going to, of course, look at the accessories, and we'll start first those accessories with looking at the display stand that comes included with the figure. Now, if you've collected the Mafex figures over the years, nothing really does change with these display stands. It's the same clear acrylic plastic that they use, same shape, and it still has the same adjustable neck. It adjusts in 3 points. You can also take the neck, pop it off from the middle area, and move it to either one of these sides. I've never really met anybody that decides to move it to the sides, but I guess if you did want to have more than one figure on display, you could actually put 2 necks in there and just have your figures pitted against one another. No, when it comes to displaying Venom, I would be displaying it with the neck in the middle area here. And like I said, it does have an adjustable neck. One thing I did have to do, though, is that I noticed immediately out of the packaging, the screws located on the neck area of this display stand were so incredibly loose. I had to take a screwdriver and I had to tighten the screws in all 3 places to eventually get it to that desired tightness that I was hoping for. One of the problems that many people have with these particular figures is the fact that they have a very visible open waist clip that's supposed to fit around the waist of the figure. So for example, if you want to take Venom, we'll just bring the neck back, clip it onto his waist like that. Yeah, you know what, admittingly, it doesn't really work so well with these figures because, well, the clip does stand out. Even though it's clear plastic, you can see it's right there. One thing I would really like to see them do maybe down the road is you spin this figure around on the back of the figure, right on the back of the torso. If they had like a removable part to their torso where you could take that part off and you could peg the neck. So basically, instead of actually going around his waist, this part right here would plug into the back. Then it would be clean and you wouldn't see it from the front. But until they decide to go about doing that, the only way to displaying the figure, especially if you're going to go with a dynamic pose of Venom, is that you're going to have to use the neck that they come included with. And that also includes going with the waist clip that is so visibly noticeable when you have it around Venom's waist here. So let's have a look at the accessories that come included now with Venom. If you have collected Venom or Carnage or Spider-Man, it tends to be the case that you get multiple heads, multiple hands, multiple feet, and multiple webs. We'll have a look at those webs right now. The webs of various different shapes, various different designs, and all sort of the same color scheme. Kind of very much that spaghetti webbing that McFarlane made famous. You can see not only is it just a thick, chunky webbing, but it also has those little spirals. Let's get that camera to zoom in on that. Little spirals of web that wrap around each one of the main length web. Now, one good thing about these is that they do wrap around the arms of various different designs. All you really have to do with these figures, and actually, you know what, before we go through we'll go through all of these and I'll show you guys how that attaches onto his arm. You can see that there's a couple of different configurations of the web. The web is essentially all the same, but what's different though is the way it wraps around the arms. Now again, you can have it on either one of his arms, And again, you have like just different designs for them. What you do though, all you have to really do is take the figure, grab his forearm, pop the hand off, and then just take the web and feed it through his forearm, just like that. Then go ahead and pop the hand back into place. There you go. And in some cases, the way that they design it, it kind of does look like it shoots out from his wrist. Mileage may, of course, vary, but that looks good. I really like the design of that. Of course, it looks a lot better when you've got the figure in some crazier looking pose than him just simply standing there. It doesn't look really much, doesn't make much sense having him just designed like that. But again, the idea is you just pop the hand off. Let's maybe go with like this web, for example. And again, you can just wrap this around his arm if you want. You can just have like a bit of an excess wrapped around him, for example. Let me just go ahead and pop the hand back into place. Spending a little bit more time to creatively design how I want to have the figure designed and, well, posed on my shelf. I could probably come up with something a little bit better than this, but it's just for the time being, just to show you guys how that wraps around his arms. And like I said, mileage may vary depending on how you display your figures. You may even display it a lot better than this anyways, but just to show you what it looks like with that webbing wrapped around his arms. But I like that. Let's go ahead and just actually take these off for the time being. Put those to the side. Like I said, you get 4 of these. So you can change up the way that you design these, the way that you display these when you've got the Venom figure. The other thing he comes included with, I'll just put the figure down for the time being. Get him to stand so he's not going to fall over on me. He comes with various different hands. Let's have a look at those right now. So I guess really, all that time to put the figure down, I really will end up picking him up anyways. He does come currently out of the packaging with kind of mauling hands, clawing hands, ripping the Spider-Man apart sort of style of hands. You can see right there. And then he comes with variations to that. So we'll just put, again, the figure down for a second. Comes with, again, like kind of clawing hands. Not really designed necessarily for scaling up the wall, but again, more to rip apart the web slinger. It comes with a couple of variations of gripping hands for holding the web. These actually kind of come across more like trigger hands than anything else. He comes with not quite completely closed fists, but just a little bit, just an eye shape opening, just enough to hold the webbing in his hands. Comes a couple of those. Comes with a couple of just closed fists, probably not the most exciting of the batch that we're looking at. And then again, he comes with a couple of just mauling hands. Now, the interesting thing about these hands is that they're magnetized. So they not only attach together, but I suppose if you had like a metal surface, you could probably have him scaling up the side of the wall. Up to this point, I really haven't found a proper purpose for these, but I appreciate the fact that they did include these. Now, similar to these hands, he also comes with a pair of magnetized feet. And I got to believe it works the same way. If you did have yourself like a metal surface, you probably could attach these and have them scaling up the side of the wall. That's the only purpose I can really think of. Not unless you would attach this to another figure, but that doesn't really make much sense either. You can see it's very strong magnets. Even the fact that you can put the feet together and they're not going to be going anywhere. Probably not going to be displaying it anytime soon with this figure, but again, I appreciate the fact that they do include those. So he gets those. Move those out of the way. And then, of course, the other thing he comes included with is some swappable heads. Before we get down to the swappable heads, let's pick up the figure and give you a closer look at what the defaulted head sculpt looks like. Some that prefer their Venom to have the lashing tongue out covered in green slime might be slightly disappointed by the fact that the Mafex release doesn't necessarily give you that. They give you the tongue, but the tongue stays inside the mouth. And the tongue is not anywhere, it's not snaking its way outside the mouth. I appreciate the fact that they did include the tongue. And personally, I'm somebody that likes my Venom not to have so much tongue sticking out, so this is certainly right up my alley. You can see the larger eyes there on Venom's face, very bright, sharp fangs for his teeth, and that very bright red tongue on the inside. If you want something a little bit more reserved, they also include this head sculpt here as well, which is basically the exact same head sculpt, short of the fact that this one doesn't come included with the tongue inside. I like this head sculpt quite a bit because it reminds me of the old Marvel Universe. I think Marvel Universe Series 1 Venom card had him looking like this. I always really like the idea of having Venom just with visible teeth and not necessarily a visible tongue. The downside of swapping this head sculpt off, and we'll get down to the Eddie Brock head in a second, is that you have to keep the neck in place. So the problem I found so far is every time I want to pop the head off, a lot of times the ball joint wants to stay with the head. So I will have to go in there with like pliers or something and see if I can pop that back out. and put that then properly into the socket. Let's push that back in here. Also, I want to move that ball joint just back in the dead center there. Plug this into place. It's the only downside to this figure, and so far the only thing that really drives me bananas about this figure is changing out this head sculpt. The Eddie Brock head sculpt isn't so much the problem. It's this one right here. But the idea is once you get that in place, you will have to put that, then the ball joint into the socket of this head if you want to swap them out and go from this one to this one, which I think I might end up just doing that. Find myself something to grab that ball joint because I can't seem to put that back into the neck, pull the head out, and have the ball joint stay behind. It always wants to stay with this head. So I probably will end up just displaying Venom looking like this because I like the look of it with the visible teeth and no tongue. If perhaps you prefer to have Eddie Brock maybe with a face, well, you can go ahead this route as well. Now for this, you're not going to have to remove the head on its own. You basically take the neck, the head, the whole thing, and just pop that out. Although it's a lot easier, I have to admit, putting the ball joint back into the neck. There we go. There we go. And then just take the whole thing together. And then it keeps everything together and you're not going to lose it. But then go ahead and replace it with the Eddie Brock head, which again, finishes off everything. And I like this because you can see there's this symbiote webbing stretching across the bottom of Eddie Brock's neck. Very much reminds me of like the old days of the Amazing Spider-Man comics where we saw Eddie Brock unmasked. Very cool looking head sculpt that they've given him here. The shorter hairstyle, the slightly larger caterpillar eyebrows. It works really well on this particular head sculpt. I'm not really inclined to probably display my Venom looking like this. I appreciate the fact, of course, they include this head sculpt, but I think when it's all said and done, I'm still probably going to go with this head sculpt as my favorite of the three. For the rest of his body, we'll keep Brock's head on for the time being. Of course, very traditional Venom, all black costume. I don't know if actually the light's hitting it properly, but in person I can tell you, it's not just black. Whether it reads it as all black, maybe not. The light's hitting it just the right way that you can see there's the airbrushing of the blue that they've added to the surface of it. So it's literally not all just black. There is a lot of blue that's been added in there as well. Just under certain lighting, under certain angles, that blue really does glow on the figure, and in a good way as well. There are some areas, I will admit, that the blue gets a little too out of hand, specifically on this side right here. It's the only place I've noticed on the figure. The blue is generously applied, but it's still pulled back enough. I find there's way too much blue on this one side, the shoulder, the bicep. I don't know if you can see that or not, but again, I'll just spin this around. There's a lot of unnecessary, there's too much of it on this side. But again, that's a figure-to-figure basis. I can't imagine across the board everybody's Venom is going to have the same amount of blue. It's probably going to be in same places, but probably not at different levels of concentration. Of course, you've got the big symbiote symbol on the back there in white. Similar one there on the front, slightly smaller. There's not a lot of detailing on Venom. He's a big, brooding beast. I do like the proportions that they've given this figure as well. He's got a broad enough torso, broad enough shoulders. My biggest issue I felt I was going to have with this figure was getting him out of the packaging. I was going to think that he wasn't going to be big enough. Getting him out of hand, of course, in hand, I find he's got the proper proportions. He's just that right size. In fact, I would even say I probably wouldn't even make him any bit bigger than this if I want to keep him accurate to the way he looks in the earlier comics and his earlier first appearances. So let's go ahead and go through the articulation here on Venom. So his head is on a ball joint. We've already established that. You already saw how much hassle I had trying to change that head sculpt out. But it does, to its credit, allow the head to do some considerable motions, up, down, back and forth as well. And again, rotating it. One thing you have to be careful, though, is as you're rotating the head around, the proper placement of where the neck should be will shift around with the head as well. So a lot of times I just hold the neck and then move the head back and forth this way. Again, it's disappointing the fact I have such struggle getting that ball joint to change out from this head to the other one, because this is probably my second favorite head sculpts of the one that we get in the figure or with the figure. In addition to that, he does have the secondary ball joint that's obviously at the base of the neck. That allows then the head to move a little bit more greater up and as well further down than you would be able to pull off if it was just the ball joint on its own. Then, of course, when you come to the shoulders do have the interior socket joint that allows then those shoulders to bring forward where you normally wouldn't be able to do that. That's the case also on both sides. I do always appreciate the fact that they include this socket joint on the inside. Just gives you a little bit of extra range when it comes to moving the figure. Let's go ahead and just bring those back out. One thing you'll notice probably as I was doing that is it does have a bit of a ratcheted joint when you bring those shoulder crunch, that socket joint out a bit. It has a little bit of a ratchet joint. But the arms do rotate all the way around, like that. There we go. You can also rotate the bicep. He's got a double hinge on the elbow. I don't know if I've actually said this before because there has been a couple of instances where I've looked at Mafex figures, but I appreciate the joint system that they put in the elbows and the knees. A lot of times when you are bending a figure double hinge joints, they either look really super blocky, or a lot of times it just looks like the arm has been cut right off. I like the fact that they use slightly smoother looking joints. So again, the joint is up here, the joint is down here. But the point in the middle, though, still gives you what I feel is a natural looking elbow. You can see right there. Then the forearm. The forearm itself doesn't swivel. I mean, if it does, it only swivels just on the way it's pegged into place. But the hands rotate all the way around. You can also hinge those back and forth. The top torso does have an upper torso ball joint. You can also rotate the lower torso the same way. The only downside, though, and you probably already see me doing it, is it gets hung up. When I am moving the joint, specifically the bottom half of him, when I am rotating him too far down, I find it gets caught in there. I don't know what's actually catching on, because it's not catching necessarily on this point. It's almost like it's getting caught where the joint is off-aligned. And a lot of times I really feel like I'm forcing it to get it back in place. He does have the waist swivel, but it's really stubborn, I find. Maybe just the case on Venom, and it may just be the case on my figure, but I find it's really stubborn when it comes to the bottom half of him, this part right here. Then for his legs split out. You'll see that the figures do have these kind of drop-down looking legs that you can just push back up. So if you get this figure for yourself and don't like the fact that his legs sit so far low, you can actually pull these out to give you an extra range of motion, move those out. But then when you're done with it, you just pop those back in. Couldn't be any bit easier than that. What I had mentioned with the elbows, the same rule applies here for the knees. I really like the sculpting of the knees. Is it strange that I'm talking so much about Venom's knees? But I appreciate the fact that when you are moving those, you get what I feel is a natural looking knee, or at least the shape of what a knee should be. It's unfortunate, though, like the blue makes more of an appearance here on the joints, specifically the elbows, specifically the knees, that when you're looking at it, I found there's a lot more blue going on here than anywhere else on the figure, well, except for this part right up here. And then when it comes to his feet hinge back and forth. You have the ankle pivot, and you do have toe articulation as well. So he has all the articulation where it counts. He has the proper proportions of what I would expect Venom to be. He overall is a good-looking Venom. My only shortcomings with the figure, and it's more so I feel just to my figure, not necessarily everybody's that you're picking up in stores, is I have real issues swapping out the heads. I like this head, don't get me wrong, but I would really be more inclined to want to display him with this head. And so I'm going to have to find myself maybe a pair of pliers and see if I can yank that ball joint from the base, or at least the socket area of the head, free it there, and then I'd be able to swap it from this head sculpt to this one, which I think is probably going to be the way I'd want to display the figure for myself. So unfortunately, yes, I did have to order Venom online, and along with that goes all those fun extra little charges you're not thinking of when you look at the initial price, things like exchange rates, things like shipping charges, and things like brokerage fees that get dumped on your lap when these figures finally arrive. In a perfect world, in a perfect scenario, I could have just gone to my local comic book store, walked on in, and right there would have been all the comic versions of Mafex figures, but that's not the case. A lot of my comic book stores seem to stock only movie tie-in figures like Suicide Squad and Man of Steel. Those are fine figures, but that's not the kind of Mafex figures I'm looking to collect. At least I ordered this from a reputable place like Big Bad Toy Store. At least what I knew I was getting was a real legitimate Mafex Venom, because that's one of the problems that go along with these Mafex figures, is if you're ordering these from places like eBay, a lot of times if you're not careful and you're ordering these overseas, you're ultimately buying yourself a knockoff figure. Venom would have been at the very top of my list. Actually, no, that's not true. Venom would have been second to the top of my list of these Mafex figures I wanted to collect. The one at the very top would have been the comic tie-in Spider-Man that had that really cool lighting on his costume. The chances of me getting that one now are probably slim to none, just simply because the prices of these skyrocket. It seems like stores stock them quickly, sell out, and then they never stock them again. Still like to get my hands on the Hush Superman. I don't even know if that's going to be happening anytime soon, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Venom here is a fantastic looking figure. And I'm glad eventually I did pull that trigger and order this guy online, because what I did get is that comic version of Venom that I've always wanted from day one. He has swappable heads available, 3 actually to be exact. The one with the visible tongue that we've got here in Final Looks. The other head sculpt I would have preferred to put on him instead, but I'm just having problems with the ball joint. And then he also gets himself the Eddie Brock face portrait as well. Not to mention he comes with a ton of webbing, swappable hands, and even magnetized feet and hands if you can find a purpose for those. The proportions on this figure are appropriately suited for Eddie Brock's Venom. I didn't think he was going to be the right size when I looked at him in the packaging. I thought maybe he was a little too small. But again, you just widen out those arms, bring those socket joints out for the shoulders. And I think he's the proper build he should be. Because he's not a big monster in the comics. He's just a very muscular man. At least the earlier runs with Venom. He's a muscular-looking character, and I think for that, based on that, the Mafex figure delivers exactly the type of Venom I would want. The only real problems I've had with this figure really only stem from changing out the heads, and I could just be making it a lot worse than what it really is. Maybe if you picked up the figure for yourself, you don't have any issues swapping out the heads, but it seems to be a problem with mine. I'm sure the first couple of times I do that, maybe even if I submerge his head sculpt in water, may help to free that ball joint from the base of his head. But short of that, I'm really happy. This is kind of like the definitive looking Venom, and I'm finally glad to have this one as part of my collection. If you've managed to pick up the Mafex Venom for yourself, let me know down below in the comments section what you guys think of the figure. Or your video question, if you have been collecting Mafex figures, what's your favorite Mafex figure that they've released? Definitely would be on board getting more of these. It's just a question of whether I can actually find these locally, or if I will have to go, like Venom, the route of ordering these online. I really hope that's not the case. I really hope that's not the case. Needless to say, if you're fans of this channel and liking all the content you're seeing, consider the idea of hitting that subscribe button down below. You can also move on over to the bell notification as your way of telling YouTube that you want to get those friendly reminders whenever there's a new video popping up. Just know that Monday to Friday, 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is when new videos will be popping up. And you never know, we may be tackling a few more Mafex releases in the coming videos. Interesting. As always, guys, keep your peepers peeled to this channel. And as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.